Welcome back into One-on-One, New York's longest running sports call-in show on 90.7 FM. Right now, we're joined by sculptor Marc Mellon, who sculpted in particular the Handshake for the century. You can see it, an awesome Zoom background. Apologies for you guys listening on the radio that you're missing out on that. But Marc, thank you first off just so much for taking the time with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. This is a magic moment in public sculpture in America. We're swapping out a lot of work. Importantly, things are coming down which should never have been put up. Things that were meant to put fear in the hearts of Americans who just happen to be born Black, and we're at a point where cities around the country, large and small, are thinking about how we can better reference our diversity in our public art. So we're dusting off heroes from yesteryear who were never properly acknowledged, including many women, and otherwise looking at moments such as this magic moment between Jackie Robinson and George Shuba that reflect the diversity of our nation and embrace a future where America shows more tolerance and a better understanding of what equality really means.
Yeah, and I think you did a really nice job of, bringing that up, because that's what I wanted to start with, in particular, the Handshake for the century and the significance of it with Jackie Robinson and George Shuba, because I'm a pretty big baseball fan, but I really wasn't aware of this, honestly, before, I got introduced to you. So do you want to kind of just start off with going into maybe the historical significance of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was not aware of this particular moment either. A lot of people who are in the know, recognized this moment, and there are books about the preseason going into this moment in baseball and civil rights history. But now more people are going to know about it, and that's a good thing. It was over 75 years ago. It's important to understand that we had just come out of World War II, and where we had Black troops and white troops in segregated units. In 1946, at the time of this handshake, our American armed forces were yet formally integrated. It's crazy to think that, but it wasn't until a year later that that change happened. When this moment happened in Jersey City, New Jersey, with 25,000 people in the stands cheering Jackie on, it was an fully integrated crowd. That in and of itself was novel for 1946 and would have been completely historic in the Deep South. So if you think of that, Jackie Robinson, when he wrote his biography, he talked about feeling that he had the weight of his race on his shoulders, that he knew that if he succeeded in baseball, that it would open up opportunities for all Black Americans in sport, but beyond sport, on the factory floor, in white-collar jobs, and ultimately in the boardroom. And Jackie, you're too young to know, but he was famously on the board of Chock full of nuts coffee when that was a big coffee brand, and he was on other boards as well. He really changed the profile of who would be considered for the jobs that make up corporate America. It wasn't just sports, and it was very important that his people be considered to be at least considered for employment across the board. And why not?
I love so much of what you said there about the impact of this statue and this moment on not just baseball, but about the world as a whole. And so much of your statues and your work kind of focuses, you mentioned at the beginning about, the humanity of it and kind of the impact that your statues can have. So With all of that in mind, what made this project one in particular that you wanted to pursue and that you signed on for?
Well, I mean, look, I'm doing what I do. I'm a little older than perhaps I look, but I'm doing this for 45 years now. And when I started out, way at back in the mid 70s, I always thought, there's going to be moments, there's going to be projects that are special, and I'd like to have the skill set to be considered. While early on in my career, first off, I got some real good traction in sports. I had an exhibit at the '84 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, just my sports work. I was soon after hired by the NBA to do the NBA MVP trophy, the Maurice Podoloff trophy. And but as much as I love sports, I wanted to make sure that I had the skill set to do portrait busts and public statues. And so I worked at that as well. I also love dance, and I worked with dancers. And this is a piece that where athletes at their best are often dancers. They have the same sense of movement, and the emotional content of dance and sports is very similar. I pursued all those things, and then when it was time to find the sculptor for this particular project, they needed someone who could make these portraits authentic of Jackie Robinson and George Shuba, circa 1946, to capture the movement, the complex movement of the two figures, and someone who also had the experience doing public artwork, and which I have that as well. I have works that are of this scale and bigger, from New Orleans to University of Rochester, right by the Great Lakes. I mean, I really have a good deal of public work out there. And so from that point of view, just my skill set, it was exciting. But if you look at with a little bit more depth at what I've done, I did a bust of that I called Becoming Muhammad Ali back around the year 2000. And so I associate him with the end of colonialism. That this is Muhammad Ali, more than any other person on this planet, is probably better known. His name is better known than anybody. Doesn't matter where you live. And it's because he fought for not just the right to box, but he for a period of time, because he objected to our war in Vietnam, he was banned from boxing in America for a period of time. And so he really became a civil rights icon as well, and globally beloved eventually. Over time, he became, when Muhammad Ali passed away, and I got this from some of the, one of the white board members at the Ali Museum in Louisville, Kentucky. This guy said to me, I know my neighbors well, and I know their history. And I know that not everyone had good things to say about Muhammad Ali in the early years, but they grew to love and respect him. And what I saw when the hearse traveled through the streets of Louisville, neighbors who had been less than equality driven, people who did not have a strong sense of social justice years before, were there standing and paying respect. And that's the power of when a great athlete can speak to our times and speak to a better nation. The reality is that whatever your background, at some point, your ancestors, most of us, were newcomers, and the newcomers in general were not well welcomed. I mean, they had to pay their dues. It's just a different deal when you think of ancestors being brought over on a slave trip, on a slave ship. It's a different deal. And what was important for me in this project was to better understand the Black experience before Jackie Robinson. And I can advise you all to go to Ken Burns's work in baseball, but beyond that, to Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s work, the great PBS documentaries that he's produced. You go through, as I did, carefully, the history of Reconstruction. There were Black baseball players playing in what was considered the major leagues in the 1880s. And then, hard stop. There was a gentleman's agreement. We're not gonna let these guys play professional ball anymore, not with us. And that was Reconstruction from the 80s on, 1880s. There's a connection from pre-Civil War and how Black Americans were treated, especially in the South, but not only in the South. There was a lot of toxic racism in the North and the West as well. Their experience is different than other immigrants. Barack Obama was a whole nother revelation that to have our first Black president is something you could not possibly conceive of back in 1946, when Jackie Robinson, all he was hoping for was the right to play professional baseball as a Black man. We've made extraordinary strides, but we've got a long way to go. And I'm not just talking about how we accept people of other colors. It's about other religions. It's about other ethnicities. If anyone who accepts the American way of life and understands our democratic system should be welcome. And if you can go that far to embrace our Constitution, this is in the news every day. We're looking at it in real time during the hearings this week. And it's as timely as ever. It's more timely than ever, because sadly, a good percentage of our population is willing to abandon the basic checks and balances of our democracy. And that is terribly dangerous for the future of anyone in America who's a minority of any kind, So here we have one of many statues that are being planned around the country that will better embrace the idea that America is still the land of opportunity, that America still has that torch that the Statue of Liberty raises high. We're at the time where we're trying to shine up that torch, and those who who are actively doing it get a special sense of self accomplishment because we're doing it for our children and for our grandchildren. Knowing that if you have a more welcoming world, more welcoming America, we can again be that beacon to the rest of the planet. We're only 4%. This is crazy. We're only 4% of the population of the world. It's hard to fathom that since our economy is still something like 30% of the world's economy. But we're only 4% of the world. We fight way above our weight. Our influence is way above our numbers. And when America speaks and does the right thing, we send messages to countries around the globe and to leaders in every country around the globe. And we can send toxic messages, or we can send messages that there's a better way, that if you embrace democracy and the rights of minorities within your populations, then it doesn't have to be a caste system. And this is not just the American history. There are tiers of the way people are treated globally in countries where you wouldn't even imagine it. And the tribalism that exists, not just between nations, but within nations, continues to be a challenge to the future of our planet. If we can send messaging out as a stronger, more welcoming America, that there's a better way, we help in ways that it's hard to even conceive. We help in obvious ways, but we help people think differently about what their future can be. And that's in every way a good thing.
Yeah, I think you just did a really good job of kind of talking about how there's a lot more that goes into your sculptures than just the physical things. You need to have a great understanding of the background and everything. So I really appreciate there. And just one last question, just while we go full circle here, because you've obviously been in the industry for a long time, as you talked about, you've accomplished so much. Where does this rank as maybe an accomplishment or project for you overall for everything you've done?
You just made me a little teary-eyed. This was a Grand Slam home run, and it was in the ninth inning and we were down. It really feels, and it was walk-off. It was it feels like the kind of thing you dream about when you're just starting out. But I want to emphasize, as a kid, first learning these skills, I did get a good liberal arts education first, but a lot of history, a lot of philosophy, and that's helped a lot in my understanding of the world. But that understanding that as an individual, you can make a difference is something I'd like to emphasize today as I speak to two college students on their way to their lives and careers, and to your broad audience. It's you need to rethink, if you haven't yet, what the possibilities are broadly, and remember it's not a race. That you can if you can change your mind about career paths and what have you. If you find something that you're good at, and I found sculpture, I was amazed that my hands did what I wanted them to when I started doing art. What's wonderful about art is that you can really address any and all of your interests. But whatever it is that you choose, I play with clay, and I can make statements that have global significance. So whatever your career path is, think about what you can do. And think about what you can do if you have the audience. When I say the audience, it could be in the business world, it could be on radio, it could be anything. But if you're coherent in your thinking and comfortable in your presentation, and have something to add to our global discourse, it's in some ways more fun to think of yourself as a leader than a follower. So I urge you all to figure out how to lead.
That's really well said. And then the last question I wanted to ask you is, I'm curious, is when you think about this sculpture and you think about the sculpting media in general, what do you think it can do that just a photo or just knowing the history cannot?
When you approach public sculpture, there's an immediacy to it. There's a reason that going back to the Greeks and Romans, and to the great religions born around the globe, that most religions created images to worship. They created, whether it's the Catholic Church or the great Buddhist sculptures that were created. There's a history across the board of images that help us think of what our values are, that refer to our values. They can be used for different purposes, though. So when the toxic work of the 1920s went up, honoring Confederate leaders and being put up in cities and towns that were diverse but not welcoming to the other, they were put up for the wrong reasons. And we have the continued opportunity to put up public sculpture that speaks to contemporary values of acceptance, of equality, of diversity. And this sculpture speaks to all those things in just a very basic way. A number of sculptures just in the last year have honored the suffragette movement. It's 100 years ago, women could not vote in America. And you think about that, that's also a little crazy, isn't it? It's the right to vote is something that we need to cherish and respect and fight to maintain. And it's under attack in many states across the country. There's not an issue of import that public sculpture cannot speak to. That's really the point, and that art cannot speak to. And I'm another level of proud that I created this piece of public art. And I'm looking forward to the next and the next. I'm working on a bust now of Greta Thunberg. I mean, she's old, 17 or 18, but I think she's just an extraordinary presence in our fight to recognize and react to the global warming going on. And I don't even know where the bust is going to go, but I do know that I'll display it. And if it inspires one person, then that's great. One person who becomes a leader in the fight. When you look about what's happening to our planet, Greta, who she publicly acknowledges that she's autistic and she has her own issues. I think the the purity with which she approaches global warming is part of the fascination that I have, the appeal. She thinks we are out of our minds for that our leaders are out of their minds for not doing more. And she's absolutely right. She opened my eyes to another level. It's, I have other projects that I'm working on currently. This guy named Raphael Lemkin, back in the 1918, World War I, he goes to his law professor in what was then part of Poland, and he says, "What's the deal with countries killing populations within their borders? What's the global legalese behind it? What's illegal about it?" And his professor says, "Well, nothing." He spent the rest of his life working on the concept of genocide. He created the word genocide. There was no word for it. And it took him virtually his entire life till 1949 to convince the United Nations to accept the genocide conventions. I'm working on his bust now as well. I don't know where it's going to go, but it needs to go somewhere along with the story that as an individual, you can make a difference. The way Greta is making a difference and will be, I believe, for the rest of her life. The way he did, the way Elie Wiesel, who I've done busts of, made a difference in our understanding of war and peace and tolerance. And the need that we be vigilant, because we have to be on guard against the next crazy, the guy who wants to grab the military tools of his country and wreak havoc. These are important issues that are ongoing. They don't go away. They don't go away. And it's part of the yin and yang of our world. I had a great patron who used to tell me, "Mark, it's a beautiful world and it's a horrible world." And it will and always be those two things. And it's for us to who are paying attention to that, to try to make it more beautiful and to try to tamp down the horror. We're doing it successfully globally, but not what we could do. Not what we could do. We can make it even better.
Right. And so we will be sure to make sure to look out for more of your work. Some of the stuff you're talking about, it seems really interesting. Marc Mellon, thank you so much for spending the time with us. We really do appreciate it. We will be right back with more one-on-one on 90.7 FM.
Thank you so much.